Cincinnati's win against Notre Dame could be one of the more impactful games of the season, of the college football playoff race. And certainly those around the Cincinnati program are already calling it one of the biggest wins in program history. I will stop short on that because it's more of like, yeah. I mean, but if you go lose 3 American Athletic Conference games, then that win was great. It was top 10. It was beating Notre Dame, team you haven't played in 121 years. But sure, I think, though, the way that Cincinnati's defense played in this game against an admittedly flawed Notre Dame offensive front and a quarterback room that has been in rotation over the last couple weeks. But I think that you've got to give some Iowa level advantages to this Cincinnati defense in the way that they just seem to come up with plays, the interceptions, the special teams fumble recoveries, the stops that they seem to deliver when it counts the most against Indiana and against Notre Dame, 2 road situations over the last 3 weeks. It is something that I think validates anyone who believed that Cincinnati was going to be one of the strongest teams in the American Athletic Conference. And now that they have these 2 wins that, many of us were believing they would not get both of them, they have the non-conference resume that no group of 5 team has ever had before. They are going to be likely in the polls 5 or 6 come Sunday. They were at number 7 going into it, which means that you're at a starting position that is higher than any group of 5 team has had before. Now, we still have several weeks before the College Football Playoff Selection Committee starts to reveal its own rankings, and those are the ones that matter when it comes to this playoff race. But as you looked at Cincinnati coming out of that result, did you change at all your opinion of where that group is at this point in the season?
No. I mean, Cincinnati was the better football team before the game, I think, and they're the better team now. I didn't think they should be favored at South Bend, but they showed why they were, and they outplayed Notre Dame pretty much in every single facet of that game, defensively, offensively, special team. Well, not so much special teams, but just they were the better team I feel like from start to finish. Like Notre Dame on its very first possession drives all the way down the field, and you're sitting there thinking, maybe the Cincinnati defense isn't as good as we thought it was. And then bang, they force the turnover in the red zone. They pick off Jack Cohn in the end zone. And from that point on, it was all Cincinnati. But like my thing with Cincinnati and the playoff has never been about Cincinnati. It's just about the college football playoff and what they're going to do. So like you're saying that Cincinnati's got a resume that nobody's like a group of 5 teams ever had before. Well, that Indiana win is going to be meaningless by the end of the year. Like this is an Indiana team that's going to be 6-6. So I don't think Cincinnati's going to get much credit for that. This Notre Dame win could hold up pretty well, depending on how the Irish go from this point forward. But I just think that like it's in a strange way, Cincinnati wins, Notre Dame gets a huge win, but on the very same day, UCF loses to Navy and pretty much destroys any credit that they're going to get for beating UCF from the committee. That's just another thing the committee's going to be able to look at and say, well, they've only got one impressive win.
Yeah, Tom, I think you're right. I mean, Indiana getting shut out tonight against Penn State. I don't think Cincinnati's going to the playoff ultimately, unless some further chaos really happens. And I really haven't thought about that scenario quite yet, but it would have to be pretty specific. And the thing is, like, UCF could lose a couple more times this year. Is Indiana going to make a bowl?
It's going to be fighting for one. I don't know that it's guaranteed of one now because after tonight's loss, that drops it to 2-3.
Yes, correct.
And
next week, Michigan State.
Yeah,
I'm probably going to take Michigan State over them. Now they'll be a short favorite, right? In Bloomington.
Here's the rest of Indiana's schedule. They've got Michigan State next week, then Ohio State. So now they're probably 2-5 at Maryland.
I think win. Maryland matches up much better with them than they did Iowa.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of interceptions in that game. I think we can all agree on that one. And then the week after that, they're at Michigan. So now we're looking at a team that's probably 3-6 at best going into the final 3 weeks that needs to win out versus Rutgers, Minnesota, and at Purdue.
Which it could.
It
could, for sure.
I think that Indiana being in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, Indiana being a Power 5 team that was ranked in the preseason top 25 is something. I also think that You don't?
No, not if it's at the end of the year and Indiana's 5-7. It doesn't.
I don't think that the playoff committee gets that deep.
Yes, they do. We don't. We give them some credit.
All they need is a little bit of an excuse to keep Cincinnati out.
Yeah.
And one of the Power 5 teams not making a bowl is perfect excuse. Hey, look, it's admirable they tried, but unfortunately, like, it does matter what happened on the field, and it does matter how good the team actually is this year. And we had this, by the way, if you recall, I don't remember what year this was, but there was a year where the committee actually started to discuss scheduling intent, and they didn't fully get down the road. It was almost like some dicta in a Supreme Court case type thing. But I remember, like, man, I wonder if they'll ever bring that up. Like, they intended to schedule tough. Like, they scheduled teams that are normally good, and then they weren't good.
Like, in the non-conference,
yeah,
they had intended to go out there and really challenge themselves. It's not their fault that Baylor got hit with NCAA sanctions or whatever, and they faced Jim Grobe. That sort of adjustment on the fly. The thing that matters to me, and I said this on CBS Sports HQ, I did not think it was funny. I just thought it was factual, but Hakeem Dermish, the host, absolutely loved it. But I root for me, and I just think that it is interesting to have Cincinnati with these 2 wins. And it is interesting because Cincinnati's going to be favored the rest of the way, and they're not going to be dominant because they're a college football team. And college football teams, when they're playing under these kinds of circumstances, sometimes may crack. Like this, you're right. We might not even have this conversation about a 13-0 Cincinnati team and where they fall against these one-loss conference champions, these one-loss conference championship losers, which, by the way, I believe that if you were to really play this thing out, it's like 2 SEC, Oklahoma, and Big Ten winner is sort of the way that you just fill out your playoff, and Cincinnati misses it. Yeah. In which case, like, Bud, you talk about the scenarios that would lead to like the LSU 2 loss, or just like what would need to happen elsewhere for everything to fall into place. But I just think that on a week-to-week basis, college football is interesting and fun to talk about with this Cincinnati team, with this coach, and with this defense, and with this quarterback who, like, again, the variance in this guy's performance, even within a game, is all over the place. But that's what makes it fun. I think that it is great to have Cincinnati with these 2 wins, because while you all can sit here and be like, no way, no way, no way, and I think you're probably right, we at least can have a conversation with the entire college football public and sell the sport to people who aren't invested as like, I don't know, because we've never had anyone start this high in the rankings and have these kind of non-conference wins, because the last team that had these kind of non-conference wins corked it in conference play, which may be a preview of what's happening to Cincinnati. But you know what? We at least get to roll down this path and see how it goes.
That's the funny thing about these conversations, because, I mean, it's depending on where you are, it's October 3rd, it's October 2nd. Every single weekend of the season, we see teams losing games we don't think they're going to lose.